everyone. Hope you're having a good Wednesday so far. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Callie and I'll be your host for this webinar. And so in this session, Kyle Roberts will be walking us through how to create an analytic app, how to control filters and update files to process through the app, and how to deploy the app on your Alteryx server. If you enjoyed this webinar, please feel free to check out any of our past webinar recordings. They're listed under the Insights tab on our website. And so first, we have a few housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all attendees after the session. And second, we'll be answering questions at the end of this webinar, so please feel free to pose any questions in the chat. With that being said, I'm now going to go ahead and introduce today's speaker, which is Kyle Roberts. He is a data scientist and client success leader here at Resultant. He has held several professional positions at SMU, Baylor College of Medicine, and the University of North Texas. Kyle co-authored the Y-Hat package in R programming language, and additionally is an expert in multi-level modeling and co-authored the Handbook of Advanced Multi-Level Analysis. So with that, Kyle, I'll pass it off to you.
All right, thanks, Callie. So excited to be able to work through this with y'all, but just wanted to, today we're going to talk really all about apps, and the reason we're going to, especially analytic apps, the reason we're going to talk about this is because I grow tired in my job sometimes of being the person that's like, hey, can you rerun this, but can you run it for this date range? Or hey, can you rerun this, but can you run it for this group of people? Or hey, can you rerun this, but can you run it for just for the blue group or something like that? Or can you filter that out? And so sometimes that gets really frustrating. And so the idea behind Alteryx and building analytic apps is that we can have a thing that we can share with the rest of the organization without them necessarily having to have Alteryx or having to be just constantly sending you emails. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a really simple data set. And so this is, I've just got, I made this data set myself. I've got 3 colors in here. So if you see, there's 6 rows of data. There's 2 that are blue, 2 that are red, and 2 that are green. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about, normally what we would do is, let's suppose we wanted to split our data set, or we wanted to filter out everyone whose score is, let's say, less than 3 or something like that. So normally what we do, just grab our filter tool, pull it down here, and then inside the filter, we would say select column whose score is everyone that is less than 3. Okay, so now we would then, if we want to, we can add our browse tool there on the end, right? And when we run this, then we see, okay, there's the 2 blue people who have the score less than 3. Okay, which is nice, but then, our boss comes back and they go, oops, I'm sorry, I meant less than 4. And so, we have to go back in here and we have to delete that, and now we have to rerun it, and to be less than 4, right? And so then there's our output. So wouldn't it be nice if we had a way that they could, we're not having to go in here and edit all these things, but we had actually an analytic app that can control just this simple thing. Okay, so how we do this is we go to this interface tab. And in this interface tab, the first one, I'm going to show how to use a few of these, not all of them, but I'll show how to use a few of them. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this one that says numeric up down, and I'm going to drag it onto the canvas. If you'll notice, when I drag it down here, it wants to connect to that queue. I actually don't want it to connect to that. Or that almost an hourglass, it looks like, or a queue. I don't want it to connect to, I do want it to connect to the lightning bolt, but it doesn't want to do that on its own. So I'm going to drag it far enough away to where it just it appears up here on my canvas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a line from this hourglass or this queue all the way down to this lightning bolt. And then when I do this and I let go, I want you to watch what happens. That we have something appears there, that this is the action tool, and that is just magically kind of going to appear there, because what Alteryx is going to want to do is create an action. Okay, so let's set up our tool, and then we'll talk about kind of how to use this. Now, the neat thing is that when I did drag this onto the screen, what happened is a new little button appeared over here to the right, and it's this magic wand that allows me to run as an analytic app. And so, and I tell you what, I can show you again kind of what happens here when you do that. So let me just start a new tab here just to show you, so you can see this happening in real time. there's my data set. You see there's no wand in there. I'll put some sort of filter here. I'm just going to leave it blank for now. But then when I pull down my numeric up down tool, when I pull that in here, automatically see, okay, these lightning bolts appear up here. There's that hourglass that appears there. And then also it turns to an analytic app. So now it's actually being saved as an analytic app. Okay. I just wanted you to see that happening in real time. Okay. So let's go back to our basic app. All right. And let's configure this. So what we're going to do is put a control parameter in there, or it's an interface tool that's going to allow us to control this filter. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give the user instructions. So where it says numeric up down and there's a 7 here, I'm going to put instructions to the user. So I'm going to say score is, and we're using the less than, and that's going to be their prompt in there. Okay. Now in my data, you'll see that I only have options between 1 and 6. So I'm going to control this parameter by saying, all right, let's make the minimum 0. And let's make the maximum, let's make that 7, just to be a little bit out of our range. The increments are going to be 1, meaning that it'll allow us to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It won't allow us to go decimals. And then the default number, let's put that somewhere in the middle there. So let's make that 4, and we're going to have no decimal places. Okay. And what this is doing is this is controlling when we run the app, what we're going to see on the screen for us. Okay. All right, so that's the part that's going to take the user input. And then we're going to use this action tool to update something that's down here in our filter. Okay, so the thing that I want to update in this case is I am going to use this update value. So there's actually more information there. We can do update with a formula. We can update raw XML, but for 99% of the time, we're just going to update this value. And so I'm going to expand the simple and then expand the operands. And right now, if you can see right here, we see that the filter is running score is less than 4. And so the thing that I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to use this interface tool to replace that 4. So I'm going to click on that operand value equals 4. And then I'm going to say, hey, replace that specific string, right? That's what we're going to replace is that number 4 there. Okay. And then that's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's what's going to happen is that anything that we use in our interface is going to replace that 4 that's in there. Okay, so I'm going to click off just onto the canvas there, and I have everything set up now. And so now if I hit this run as analytic app, then we'll see what I have is a question here, and it scores less than. And so if I turn it to 2 and I hit finish, I'm going to warn you that I actually set this up in a way that's not going to give us any information because I wanted to show about a lot of times this is the mistake that people make when they first make their analytic app. Okay, so I'm going to hit finish and we're going to see, oh, it didn't give me any results or anything to see at all. Okay, so it did actually run. It's just I'm not able to see any of the results. So I need to fix that. So I'm going to go back in here and exit this. And in order to do that, I need to go under view. And I need to check the interface designer. Now, lots of people, what they'll like to do is put the interface designer somewhere and lock it in. I actually don't like to do that. I like to turn it on and turn it off because I actually want more space to see some of these other things. Okay. So once I'm in the interface designer, I'm going to click on this cog here. And then do you see this? There's a checkbox here. It says on success, show results to users. And so now what I want to do is I want it to use, well, let me just leave it right there. I want it to show me the results from that browse tool. And so I'm just going to put a check next to the browse. Okay. And then I'm going to turn off my interface designer. Okay. So now if I hit my run as an analytic app, what do we want to make that? Score is less than 2. So this should return just 1 row of data. So let's see. Yep. It returns that first record whose score is less than 2, which is just that first one. Okay. I can hit OK. Now I can run it again if I want. Let's see, I can make it less than 5. So that should return the first 4 rows of data. Yeah, it sure does. There they are. And then if I wanted to, the person who's ever running this, now I could actually save this and say save all records, and it would actually, they can save it as a CSV or whatever they need to do. Okay. Now, this is a really simple example of how to do that. But let's suppose ours is a little bit more complicated. Okay, pull the browse tool down here again. And then I'm going to add another filter. And this filter, what I want to do is I want to, if you'll recall in the data set, I actually have some dates in there. Okay. In order to kind of look at these, what I may do is I may actually change some of that. No, I'll tell you what, I'll leave it the same. I'm going to add another filter in here that's like a date control filter. And so what I want to have is say, take that date, and let's say is the date is less than, and I'm going to put, remember our dates were, so I'll make it 2011-09. Okay, so dates are less than that. All right. So because remember in our data set, we have stuff from 2000 and from 2001. Okay. So let's now put a control parameter around this. So right now, if I just run this, it'll run it as score is less than 4 and the date is less than that. Okay. So in running that, normally we'll see it pulled out my blue and red that have dates of less than November 9th of 2000. Okay. And so that's those two. Well, let's add a control parameter for this one also. Now, the nice thing is with Alteryx is that the control parameter that we can pull in, or the interface tool that we can pull in, we actually have a date one or a calendar one. Okay, so we can drop that one in. Again, I'm going to drop it well above it because if I get too close, it'll try to connect to the wrong one. So I'm going to drop it right there. And then I'm going to connect it to the lightning bolt on my second filter. You'll see I automatically get that action tool in there. Okay, so let's set this one up. So I want to say, I want to tell the user what we're doing. So I'll say date is less than, and then I tell it in parentheses, I'll put the less than symbol. Okay, date is less than. And then now I have to update something. So I'm going to my action tool, expanding the simple, expanding the operands, and this is the string that I want to replace. That value right now it's 2011-09. Okay. So right now it's set up as that. So I've clicked on that. That's what we're going to do. I'll just go ahead and click replace a specific string, although I don't think it's going to matter. And now if we hit this run as an analytic app, you'll see now I have two questions in there. So the first is score is less than. So I'll tell you what, let's make that score is less than 7. And then the date is less than, and I can just pick a day. So I'll pick in, let's say November 1st, 2022. So the result of this should give us all of our data, because remember, we only had scores up to 6 and our data was actually in 2000 and in 2001. So if I hit finish, let's see if that actually worked. Yep, it sure did. There we go. So it's got all of my data. Okay. All right. So let's try a little bit different. Let's say score is less than 4. And now what I want to get to, is get down to way down to 2001. But it's going to take me a little bit to get all the way down to that date, which is a little bit frustrating, but we'll get there. Almost there. I probably should have made the date ranges a little bit different. Okay, so we'll say less than August 9th in 2000. Okay. And now if I hit, okay, so this should pull out only the first 3 rows of the data. And then having this date range in there should actually pull out another row of data. So we should only have 2 rows of data left in there. Yep, we've got blue and red. The scores are 1 and 3, so that's less than 4, right? And the date range is less than that. Okay. So, okay. So this is a little bit of a really quick, here's how to use some of those analytic apps. And the nice part is that if somebody else has a version of Designer also, you could package this up and then send it to them. And then they don't have to know anything about Alteryx or about, changing these filters. That when they get this file, all they have to do is just hit this great button right here. And now they can run their own analytic app. Okay, that's what they can do. I did want to show one thing that's kind of interesting. If I, again, go to the interface designer here, that I may want to, right now I've got the browse showing, but if I click here, what I may want to do is I may want to select that. And let's suppose I'm going, hey, I want the calendar to appear first and then the score later. So I can select the score and then hit this down arrow over here. And now when we run it, I'll see the calendar first and then those scores. So let me get rid of that just to show you what that's looking like here. Okay, so now I see the calendar first, and then I see the scores. And it still runs and works great. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit down and dirty. Let's try something a little bit more complicated. Okay. A little bit more complicated. So in this case, I already have these filters out here. So what I'm going to do is set up one that is a population filter. And this will be really similar to what you've seen before. In this case, I'm just going to, and I'm going to do this one rather quickly because I want to talk about the other ones and actually spend more time with these other two. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to pull in that numeric up down, right? And then I'm going to connect to that lightning bolt, right? And so in this one, I'm going to add the question here of estimated population is less than, all right, no, I'm sorry, it should be, because if we're seeing here, it's greater than or equal to. So I'll just put a greater than or equal to sign there. Okay, so the minimum I want is 0, but the maximum, because there's a huge range of values here. Actually, there's 1,000, there's 1,000,000, and we're going to make that 10 million. And then the increments, we want to move in increments of, in this case, we're going to move in increments of 25,000 because again, that's populations on these are pretty big, and we're going to make our default 150,000. Okay. So now why did I do that? Because I don't want to make the increment 1 here, because now when we press, when we're trying to use the up down there, we'll have to hold that button forever. But now what it will do is it will jump in 25,000 people increments. So if I'm looking at this again, if I just press up, you'll see it jump by 25,000. Okay, so it's continuing to jump all the way up to whatever value we might want. Okay, we need to fix the update value part. So again, we go in here, we're going to update that value. We click on operands and oops. The value that we want to update, sorry, is that 150,000. Okay, so we're going to place that string. All right. Okay, so now what do we do with fiscal year? Because here's the concern on this is that we don't want people to type in values that aren't possible values for our data set. So if we wanted to know like what are the possible years? So we normally, those of you who are familiar with Alteryx, we just pull in a summarize tool, right? We connect that summarize tool, and then we'd say, okay, so fiscal year, use that as a grouping variable and just give me a count of each one, right? And now when we run our analysis, we can see that, okay, here are our options. It looks like our data goes from 2003 to 2014, and there's exactly 115 rows in each within each year, or 155 rows within each year. Okay, so what we may want to do is we may want to make a parameter that controls this filter of the fiscal year, but the way that it controls it is by only giving us the options that actually appear in our data set, meaning these years. Okay, so we already have what the years are. And what we have to do is we actually have to transpose those, or I'm sorry, we need to take those as crosstab and make those years actual variables. So I'm going to use this crosstab tool, and I'll kind of show you as we go what is happening here. So the column headers are going to be fiscal years. The new values are going to be count. And let me just show you what we're doing when we do that. Oh, sorry. It doesn't matter which one of these I do, so I'll just do sum there. Okay, so now what's happening is I have a new data set that just has as columns in here, it has all of the possible years for my data that are coming out of this San Francisco controller data set. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to use this interface tool, but at this time, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use a drop down because I only want to select the possible options that are available in my data set. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now is this data that's coming out here, I'm going to connect that to the top of this drop-down tool. Okay. And so when I now look at my drop-down, you'll see that I've listed in here fields from connected tool, right? That's what's being in there. I need to tell them which year. So in essence, right here, this is where I'll put the information that's going to be displayed to them. So it'll be a select year. I'll just leave it as select year. Okay. And then now I can connect this to my lightning bolt. And now we've got a control parameter that we need to set up inside of there. So we open up the operands, and we want to replace this 2011. Okay, so that's what we want to replace in our data set. Okay. Let me click here. I'm just going to click on the canvas. And so let's see if it looks like what we want it to look like. I'll click that Run as Analytic App. Okay, we have this estimated population. And now for this drop down on Select Year, you see I've only got the options that are available in my data set. Now, the coolest part about this is because it's connecting to our data set live, right? And actually, we're seeing that when the 2015 and the 2016 data appear in my data set, this will actually repopulate itself, and I'll have 2015, 2016 as possible options here. So I tell you what, let's take 2006. We'll select the year, and then we hit Finish. Okay, and what do we see? That same error that we saw before. There are no output files. So to fix that, just going to click on the canvas, going to go to View and Interface Designer. And also too, we're going to fix something while I'm here. I want this select year to be first because that's the way it appears in my data set. Okay, so I want that select year to be first. And then now what I need to do is click on this cog and tell it, hey, when you run these and you get the results from these tools, make sure you open that browse and show that. Okay. So now it'll show me the results of that browse there. Go make that go away again. And now when I run my analytic app, let's say I'll take 2007, population's over 150,000. I'll go ahead and hit Finish, and there's my data set. Okay. So in essence, out of those 155 rows of data that were 2007, it looks like just 7 of those are coming from areas where the population is over 150,000. Okay. All right, so that's kind of cool. So now we could, if we wanted to, we could do the same thing with, if we wanted to, we could do the same thing with Airport Enterprise, where it's pulling out, in this case, I'm sorry, where it's basically making a filter where the category is what, what category is coming through there. Let me see, there's a whole types of different categories. But again, this is a nice tool to use because if I don't know all the available categories, then I can do exactly the same thing as before. I can pull in my summarize tool, put that here. That's this data that's coming out of there. And then, so I'll take my category, do a group by, just do a count of it. Now I'll add a cross tab to that. And then that works. And we'll do, so that's going to change the data. And then I know I'm quickly doing this, but because of time, I just want to get through everything. And now I can also create a drop down on that one. So I'll pull my drop down in and then connect it here through the top. And so now this one is going to control the category. And so let me add the question of which category. Oops, if I could type. Do you want? Okay. And then I'll have it update that specific spot, which is right now it's selecting Airport Enterprise. So I'm going to have it update that string. Okay. Let me click out here. And now when I run it, you'll see I have, so I'm going to take 2007, population is greater than or equal to, and I'll tell you what, I'll jot that down to 25,000. Oh, okay. And the reason I did this way is because I wanted to show you something. If you see that category is not populated, sometimes this happens in Alteryx, and all you need to do to fix that is just run the app once, and then that will populate all of this information that's in there. So now if I run this, all right, so there's, let's do 2008. Let's do the population is greater than 25,000, and we want to do, I don't know, any of these is fine. Bonded indebtedness, whatever that means. Now if we hit run, okay, there's my data set. So there's everything in 2008 that's in this category of bonded indebtedness, that also the population is above 25,000. Okay. All right, so kind of a neat way to do this, that you can do these analytic apps. Okay, so I am going to, what I'm going to do right now is stop, because I want to show you, stop with this. I want to show you something really, really complicated. Okay, so let's look at, and I just went ahead and made this already for you. I did it as a kind of as a demo for a client. And in this client had, this is all fake data, but they had really crazy data that was appearing where it was just really hard to parse and to make out. And so they had these text files that was coming out of this old DB2 system. Okay. And it was really, really hard to parse out this data. And so what I did is I made this workflow that in essence parsed all of this data. And so by parsing it, when it's really ugly like that, it turned it into something that was really pretty like this. Okay, so there's the data. There we've got to that's the end of it. And then I actually made a little nice report out of it also. Okay. Anyway, you can tell this is all fake data because it's 123 Street Road and all that stuff. But I got everything organized. And he goes, the guy I was working with goes, hey, okay, that's great. But what if we need to give that to everyone? Well, then we can easily turn it into an app where they can just drop their file, and then Alteryx will clean it all up, make it clean, make it look nice, make it work, all of that stuff. Okay. The problem is he goes, man, I don't want to give Alteryx Designer to every person there. That just doesn't make any sense, and it's not very cost effective. And so what I'd like to do instead is that they already had a really good tool called Server, Alteryx Server, and he goes, can we put this up, one of these analytic apps, turn this into an analytic app and then put it up on the server? And I go, absolutely. And so, and this is probably going to get at what a question I saw from Callie is, how do you let people use these without knowing anything about Alteryx? Because again, if you put this workflow in front of maybe an executive or CEO or something like that who doesn't know anything about Alteryx, they're going to probably freak out and go, what in the world is all of that? And then you've got these multi-row formula tools that are using like if and only if statements and things like that. And it's just really complicated. Okay. Well, the good part is we, meaning Technion, we have Alteryx Server, or Technion now Resultant. We have Alteryx Server. And so what I did is I just turned that into an app. Okay. So here's what they would see on their end. They log into the server and they say, okay, here are the applications that are available to me. So there's that one, that data parse one. Okay. And then they can actually just click inside of that data parse app. And then all they have to do is hit run. And then they can grab their own, if they want to browse to it, they can grab that's that made up data set. They can grab their data set and then hit run. And then this will take just a second to fire up. But when this runs, it will give them the output or execute something and let's say kick off Tableau or kick off Power BI with the results of it. But it'll actually run. And then let's see, I'm looking at right now, I'm at the bottom of the hour, which means I had to get in the queue because we have stuff running on our server every half hour. And so I'm probably waiting a little bit in the queue. But as this is running, you see that they didn't have to know anything about Alteryx Designer. They don't have to know anything about Alteryx. They just know that, okay, it looks like mine is running now. There it goes. And now they've got their data set, which is all of that cleaned up stuff. And now if they want to, they can actually download that and they just select the file format and they go, you know what, I just want it as a CSV and the encoding, it doesn't matter. And now they can download that data set themselves. And so they have it, or you could have it dropped someplace inside their server, inside their environment. Okay. All right, that is the most, if I can say, probably the densest 30 minutes that we've ever spent together, and trying to explain about, hey, how do analytic apps work, and how can you use them? Really, the goal of these is that you're doing crazy hard work inside of Alteryx. Can you turn that into something that now someone who all they know how to do is push buttons can run their own report, that they can go, hey, Kyle, that was great, but can you actually rerun that for 2005? And we'll make the estimated population, we'll make that 0 there, so any prize, and that is and then I need to run it for my gas enterprise group. Now, all they have to do is if they have this, they can do it themselves, right? So that will be actually in their area to be able to do themselves. And so they don't have to know anything about Alteryx. They just have to know, if we're using Designer, I press that button and then I've got my fields that are in here, and you can make notes inside of here and tell them what you want to, what you need for them and what it needs to do. So that's a way that we would use analytic apps. We do this all the times for our clients, is build apps. And so as long as they have Alteryx and or server, then we'll build it. And then all they have to do is press a couple buttons, and we're truly getting into self-service. Okay. All right. So let me pause there. Callie, let me pitch it back over to you, see if in addition to the question that I kind of already answered, if there are any other questions.
Yeah, that was great, Kyle. Thank you so much. Per usual, always a great presentation. We do not have any other questions in the chat right now, but let's wait for a minute. And if anyone here attending this session has a question, just please post it in the chat and we'll get to it.
While we're waiting to see if any questions appear, I do want to point out that this is not like this server is if you do have Alteryx Designer, server's not included with that. That is an additional purchase for your organization or for yourself. But as you can imagine, the nice thing about this is that you can have, so my collections will appear there. These are all the things that, I have right now. I did some stuff with White Hat. We did a fun thing a few years back with NFL Pick'ems. And so we made a fun analytic app for that. I did some sandbox things, and then I've got some work that I've been working on also. And then I can make all these things available to everyone within the organization. Right now, these are just kind of my own workspace in my spot. And then I can push things out as I want them pushed out. So
awesome. And Kyle, we do have another question from Peyton.
Okay.
She asked, when you ran workflow on the server, the user didn't get triggered to answer the filter question, and is asking why that didn't happen.
Oh, that's a great question. So on this one, the one that I have up there, it's not remember this right here is the server application piece of this one, right? And so they don't have a filter here because I have no filters that are applying to this that they would be able to change. All that this one is doing is asking them for, hey, send me a new data set. And so this is an example of like, okay, they may need to run this at the end of every week to clean up their data. And so instead of having to, go in here and then point this to a different file somewhere, what it actually can do is that analytic app, we can go in there. And then if I run that, then now I'm just being asked, hey, just show me your new text file that you want me to clean. And so they put that new text file in there, and then I hit run, and it runs. So great question. But yeah, this is, if I uploaded my other filter to our data set to this, it would, or the other app, then we would need to do, all those filters would appear here. Yeah. Great question.
Awesome. All right. I don't think there's any other questions. So we go ahead and wrap it up. But thank you everyone for attending us today. And Kyle, thank you for such a great presentation. That was awesome.
Appreciate it. And if there's anything we can help y'all with in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. Love to work with you. We love working with Alteryx, and especially with your teams, and kind of for that upskilling piece if you ever need the upskill.